Welcome back, Marble sports fans, to Fubeca's Marble Runs. I'm Jeremiah, and I'm glad to be here for this Line of Collision Marble Tournament. How this tournament will work is each marble will have a team going on their respective sides, and then they will collide on the catwalk, causing them to come off the catwalk, and then each marble will end up in one of the lanes on each side of the catwalk, and whichever lane you land in will give you respective points, and then whichever team has the most points will advance to the next round. And then we'll keep going until there's only one marble left, and that marble will be crowned champion of this tournament. Here you can see the bracket system. We have a dual style system. First off, we have Germany versus Canada. And we're off. Germany's on the left, Canada on the right. First collision. And one of the Canada marbles gets in the red, gets a 0. You can see one of the red lanes has a -4. And it will be Germany who will be advancing to the next round. They get 12 points. Canada only gets 11, which was a very close match. If Canada had gotten into that yellow lane right beside the red, they would have gotten a 9 with that second marble right there, and they would have easily advanced. So that's one of the things that these marbles need to do, is avoid the middle red lanes as much as possible. And then an element of speed comes up there, because if you get to the catwalk before the other team, then you'll collide on their side of the course, and then you'll not be farther away from the middle red lanes. Next up, Spain versus India. Spain gets 2 6s, but India gets 2 7s. India smashes out Spain 16-8. Spain gets a -4. See, there's another one of those red lanes. You really have to avoid those red lanes at all costs if you want to advance in this tournament. You can see there, all the marbles almost completely missed each other. That's a very interesting strategy. Next up, we have Portugal versus Brazil. Brazil in the yellow on the left, Portugal in the green. And we're off. Brazil having a marble lagging behind. That happened in last race. Brazil has one of the marbles out of the entire course, and then another marble in the -4. But Portugal has -1. They have 3 and then -4. Brazil somehow wins that heat. Unbelievable. Brazil having one in the red lane and one outside of the entire course. One marble was all it took for Brazil to get in this next round, because Portugal did such a poor job. 2 marbles in the red lanes and then 1 in the 3. So Brazil will be advancing to the quarterfinals. What a heat. Portugal having a very hard time in that last heat. Mexico versus Argentina now. And we are off. Mexico in the green. Let's see who gets it. Mexico gets 2 -4s, and their overall score is -6. Argentina gets 18. Mexico will be eliminated in the first round in this tournament. They aren't doing very good. They didn't do very good in the last tournament, and they have had a downfall here in this tournament. They will not be winning this heat or this entire tournament. They had a good streak of wins there for a couple videos, but they are starting to seem to have a downfall. Next up, China versus France. France in the blue, China in the red with black stripes. And they're off. And France having more speed there. They collided on China's side of the board, but China was still able to get 17 points. France only gets 13. Let's see how they do that in the replay. You can see France trying to get to the other side of the board. That side of the board has some higher numbers. The right side, you can see there, China actually pushing one of the France marbles down into the 2 lane. They at least dodged the red lanes though. So China will be advancing to the quarterfinals. Next up, the UK versus the USA. And we're off. USA on the right, UK on the left. The USA gets -4. And the United Kingdom gets 13 points. The USA only gets 9. So the United States will be eliminated. The UK will advance to the next round. You can see that -4 space really is a make or break for your competition here on this tournament. It will really cause your heat to go haywire, even though the USA got a 9 and a 4. Since they got that -4, the other 4 didn't even count. UK will be going up against China. Now for Indonesia versus Pakistan. Indonesia in their classic white, Pakistan in the green. And they're off. And Indonesia getting 0. And Pakistan walking on the catwalk, eventually choosing the 0. Indonesia will come out on top 10 points. And Pakistan only gets 7. Pakistan lagging on the catwalk, can't quite decide where they wanted to go. And then fell at the wrong time going into the red lane, the 0 lane. Let's see just how that happened. You can see it stopped right at the entrance of the other side of the board. And then was catwalking on the wall. Almost went on that side, but almost even got the -4. That would have been detrimental for Pakistan. But they still were eliminated anyway. Indonesia making it to the quarterfinals. Now for Japan versus Vietnam, the final round in this first round of 16. And they're off. Japan coming out to the slight lead. They all get good points. And it will be Vietnam, though, who will advance to the next round. Japan only gets 6. Vietnam gets 16. An ultimate smash out for Vietnam, if you will. 10 more points than Japan. But none of them got in the red section. So really, it would just depend on which lane they chose. Okay, so Japan did get 1, 2, and 3. And then Vietnam got 3, 9, and 5. So Vietnam will advance to the quarterfinals. Now it's time for Germany versus India. India in the white, Germany in the bluish with white stripes. And they're off. Germany gets a 0. India getting some good points. They got 18 points. Germany only gets 9. So India will advance to the semifinals. See one of the India marbles lagging behind a little bit. They still were collided with the last Germany marble. Germany getting a 0. So India will advance to the semifinals. Now for it's the next quarterfinals of Brazil versus Argentina, 2 rivals in the World Cup at least. Let's see who comes out on top. Brazil in the yellow, Argentina in the blue. And they're off. Brazil gets 2 reds, one -4, 1, 0. Argentina gets 13 points. Brazil only gets 1. A downfall for Brazil. Brazil fans are not very happy about this result. As if you remember, though, in the last heat, Brazil barely got into the semifinals because they had one of the marbles actually fly off the entire course. And then they had a red. They only got 3 points, but because the other team got 2 -4s, they were actually a negative score. So Brazil had only 1 point, and that's all they needed to advance to the quarterfinals. Now it's time for China versus the United Kingdom. And they're off. And both teams get -4. But the United Kingdom gets 3 points, and China only gets 2. So the United Kingdom will be advancing because they only have -1. China has -2. 2 negative scores. Definitely an interesting heat. See, both teams got the -4 there, and then they weren't able to get +4 to even just get a positive score. Advancing with a negative score, that is a new one here on Fubeca's Marble Runs. UK advanced to the semifinals. Now it's time for the final quarterfinal. Indonesia versus Vietnam. And Vietnam gets 2 6s and a 4. Indonesia only gets 2 2s and a 1. So Vietnam gets 16, Indonesia gets 5. And Vietnam will be advancing to the semifinals by far. See Vietnam having 2 marbles way over there in the last lane on that side. You can see one of the Vietnam marbles actually getting hit back up the entry lane. And Indonesia not having a very good heat. So Vietnam will be going up against the UK. Now it's time for India versus Argentina, the first semifinal of this tournament. And they're off. And Argentina gets 2 -4s, and then the other marble gets pushed up into the other side's entry lane. Argentina gets -1. India gets 5, so India will advance, but that was a crazy round for Argentina. If you watch right here, 2 marbles go in the -4, and then the last marble goes up into the entry lane. See, look at that. And they come back around and get a 7, which they still got a -1, because 2 -4s is -8, plus 7 would be -1. So India will be going to the final round versus either the UK or Vietnam. Argentina will go into the 3rd place match. And we're off. Vietnam versus the UK. UK gets 2 -4s. Vietnam gets 2 1s and a 2. So Vietnam will get a 4. United Kingdom gets -5. And they will be eliminated. Vietnam will advance to the final round versus India. The United Kingdom will go against Argentina in the 3rd place match. Vietnam versus India, 2 of the big names here on Fubeca's marble runs. Who will come out on top? We've seen quite a few teams get 2 -4s. Definitely unfortunate for those teams. Now for the 3rd place match, Argentina versus the UK. Argentina in the white, United Kingdom in the blue. And they're off. 2 5s and a 4 for Argentina, 2 3s and a 2 for the United Kingdom. Argentina gets 14. United Kingdom only gets 8. So Argentina will be able to sit on the podium, and the United Kingdom will get 4th place in this tournament. Look at that. 4 marbles colliding and going the direct opposite way. Now it's time for the final round of this tournament, India versus Vietnam. Who will become king of the line of collision? India in the white on the right, Vietnam in the yellow on the left. And they're off. This is the final moment. Vietnam gets a 0, a 1, and a 6. India gets 2 9s and a 1. India will be champion of this tournament, with Vietnam coming in at 2nd. An amazing move by India. 19-7. Vietnam only getting 7 points because they got a 0 in the final round. That's not the time to get 0 points. India getting 2 9s. That's the highest possible score that you can get on this board. And if they had gotten that last marble in the 9, they would have had a lot more points. India will be the champion of this tournament. Congratulations to India for being your line of collision champion, with Vietnam coming in at 2nd and Argentina in 3rd place. Definitely an action-packed event with a lot of failures and smash outs, with India coming out victor. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe.